Hello, my friends. I am very happy that you are here and press play on today's episode of Stand Up because I've got the great Sam Youngman, who I feel like is a real diamond in the rough. Just a hilarious, passionate, righteous, smart, and empathic guy who I love. I love him very much, and today he is as smart and funny as ever before, so you're going to love that. If you want to jump right to my conversation with Sam Youngman, you can do that. It starts at 48 minutes. It's also up and available at youtube.com/standupwithpete, which is where my live interviews go. You can see me live tomorrow with Joy Reid. Joy Reid is going to be my live guest, I think 11:30 tomorrow on YouTube and other platforms. I hope that you will join us tomorrow. That should be a very, very good conversation. I can't do any of it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. This is an ad-free show fully supported by listeners like you, and you can get to know me at our Hangouts Mondays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. And we are fast approaching our next live gathering event. It's Farm Jam on Kevin Richburg's farm in upstate New York in the town that I actually grew up in. So I'm very excited for people to come to that, to show folks around where I grew up and even meet my parents. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking very much forward to meeting you and seeing you September 5th through 7th. If you want to know more about Farm Jam, there is a link in what's called the show notes that accompanies every episode of this podcast, and there's a very special one for you paid subscribers where you get a shot of vitamin N, which is a picture of nature with no man-made objects in it, sent in from a different listener from usually around the country and on your trips wherever you've gone, as well as a personal message from me and more. So check it out. That's it. We are ready to rock here on today's episode of Stand Up, where every day I bring on at least one very smart person as my guest, have a great conversation with them, and I run down yesterday's news, and finally I bring you a very interesting, important, entertaining, relevant clip show. Some of the best clips from yesterday, including today. I've got like a 7-minute clip from the author of the 1619 Project, PhD historian Nicole Hannah-Jones, fact-checks the fitness lady who CNN sadly invited on to their panel. The panel which I'm invited on this Friday night, actually. So you can watch me on CNN Friday night. And I'll be in D.C. on Saturday for Glenn Kirshner's event that he does for his paid subscribers. Always an amazing thing to do, to be a part of. And I know some of you will be there because you are also subscribers and supporters of Glenn Kirshner. I think I'm going to probably try to walk around D.C. like all day on Sunday, maybe rather Saturday and maybe a little Sunday as well, to show you what is going on there. Because as I jump into the news, you realize, if you haven't already, that there are National Guardsmen from, I think, 5 states now there that have been sent or are on their way to D.C., and I'm going to walk around and show you how safe it is and what it looks like in our nation's capital this weekend. At least that's the plan. We'll see. I'm on a real fitness kick. Getting started, there are, I think, 72 days until I turn 50 on Halloween, October 31st. 1975 is when I joined the world, and I've got 70 days to get as healthy as I possibly can, and I really haven't been. I got to be honest with you. The past couple of years have not been my best in terms of eating and exercise especially, but my stress levels have been higher than they've ever been, and now I'm getting it all under control. I really am. I'm feeling I'm in a good place, somewhat settled in my ways in my life as much as I've been in a long time, and I'm ready to take care of this vessel that I'm in a little better than I think I have been. So 72 days. Anybody that wants to join me on my health journey, let's talk about it. You're welcome to it. And then I plan to abandon all those goals and get right back to sugar and alcohol. All right, folks, I kid. Let's do it. Time for the news and headlines with a new bumper from John Carroll. Thank you, John.
It's Pete's Headlines and Clip Show. Get in on the shit show.
Yeah, get in on the shit show, everybody. And today is exactly what I've got for you. Lots of tough stuff to read and listen to. So let's get to it. Here's what I've got for you today. First, if you're waking up early on a Wednesday, August 20, the latest update is that Hurricane Aaron is probably not going to make landfall. Going to have huge waves closing beaches across the East Coast, evacuations underway in North Carolina's Outer Banks, but it is probably not going to make landfall. Tropical storm conditions possible along the southeast coast of Virginia. Aaron was downgraded to a Category 2 hurricane earlier Tuesday, but remains very powerful with sustained winds of 100 miles an hour. And so it looks like Kevin Richburg was right, that the models were right when we talked to him last, I think Thursday. Whenever I talked to Kevin last, he made that forecast, I believe, according to the forecast. So I guess it's right, and that's good news. That's really good news because we did not need a hurricane to hit us right away or anytime ever. So that is number one. Number two, wanted to mention that the big story and probably most important story out there continues to be the aftermath and the current negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Russia, of course, invaded and started a war with Ukraine, which is how it should be said, I think. But our tiny little mad king of an authoritarian president promised he would not send troops to Ukraine. I guess that was one development. He also suggested that he's a war hero now. I'll play that clip for you. Actually, I'm being serious. He did refer to himself as a war hero because he sent planes, is basically what he said, to bomb a mountain in Iran. We'll get to that coming up, but leaves open the possibility that European countries could agree as part of a peace deal with Russia to deploy troops to Ukraine with potential backing of U.S. air support. The leaders of Britain, France, Germany met yesterday to discuss their role in post-war Ukraine. Ukrainian officials, according to the New York Times, argue that only a binding agreement that would oblige allies to defend the country could deter Russia from invading Ukraine again. But, of course, Russia flatly rejecting any idea of an international force deploying to Ukraine because, of course, Putin wants it all. He's always wanted it all and wants to have full control, even if it's not officially Russia's. He wants to have it be a client state and have somebody in charge there that is Russian, basically, or loyal to Russia and not the West. Also, the authoritarian president of ours, Donald Trump, he described his motivation for brokering an end to the war in Ukraine because he wants to get into heaven. He said that on TV. I want to try to get into heaven if possible. Oh, my God. You can't write it. You can't. If you wrote it, somebody would be like, nah, you didn't say that. It's not even funny. That's stupid. That's a dumb thing to say. But I don't believe in heaven and hell. But if I did, I would really love to believe that he's not going to the heaven one. Maybe the other, if it were a thing. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky and his European allies have learned how to deal with Donald Trump by presenting a unified front and flatter him and compliment him, though. So I think that's, a crazy development that we have to talk about. If you want to deal with America and the American president, you have to kiss his ass in a way that is so unnatural to you and to anybody you know that it's deeply uncomfortable and feels like you're compromising your integrity and your credibility to your people, to yourself, to your family. But otherwise, he's going to come for them and he's not going to help or he's going to hurt. It's quite a wild game. Gavin Newsom, however, is playing it really, really well. I love what he is doing. More troops headed to Washington. As I said, now Tennessee planning to send about 160 National Guard troops. What? It's the sixth Republican state to announce it'll send troops to support Trump's crackdown. But so many other cities in all of these states have way worse crime. It's just a crazy gambit that they're doing. They're all just going to stand there away from their families, away from their jobs. It's terrible. But the optics are, well, what are they? It depends on who you are, I suppose. Also, in other news from the regime, yesterday, they revoked the clearances of 37 current and former national security officers, many of whom worked on Russia analysis or foreign threats to the U.S. What could that be about? All right, more news from yesterday in politics. California Republicans filed a lawsuit asking the state Supreme Court to block Democrats' redistricting plans. I don't think it'll work, but it's not going to be the easiest lift in California there. Air Canada reached a tentative deal with the union that represents 10,000 striking flight attendants. I was listening to a news report on that yesterday, and apparently They don't get paid for loading and unloading the plane. Only when the plane is leaving or in the air are they paid. What? Isn't the hardest part the loading and the unloading and dealing with all of us assholes on that little tiny tube that they have to deal? It's crazy. Anyway, it's an interesting story, an important story, and I love to see the solidarity amongst those flight attendants. In the Middle East, Israeli hardliners have ruled out a proposed hostage deal that Hamas agreed to. But Benjamin Netanyahu is yet to state his position, so the far right in Israel continues to run the show there, in case you were wondering. How about this story? Oklahoma is going to test some incoming teachers with an American First exam. That's right. Teachers from New York and California who apply to teach in Oklahoma will now have to answer questions meant to screen out woke indoctrinators with left-wing views. This is the latest attempt by fascist Oklahoma officials to push the state's education system in the direction of white Christian nationalism. Apparently, the test 50 questions will cover topics from U.S. government, religion, and gender. And I am real interested in that story. It is terrifying. Oklahoma is doing their best to re-educate America's youth into white Christian nationalists, and they're doing a damn good job. And speaking of those issues, Hillary Clinton said to Jessica Tarlov on her podcast that she thinks that the Supreme Court is going to try to do to gay marriage what they did to abortion. I've got that clip coming up for you. Legacy tractor maker John Deere announced layoffs yesterday. This is significant. 3 Midwestern facilities because of the declining sales and effects of tariffs on its bottom line. So that's a big story, and I wonder if Trump will tout that one. Republicans will tout that one as, just one of the oldest tractor makers in all of America. John Deere is so popular, in fact, that they sell hats at places like Urban Outfitters or whatever the hell they do. Target, maybe? I don't know. I just made up those stores, but I've seen their brand being worn by people my entire life, growing up in upstate New York and going to college and a farm school. All right, what else do I have for you? This is a crazy story. The FDA is investigating possibly radioactive shrimp sold at Walmart. They're warning the public not to eat it. You don't say? You don't think you should eat it? The FDA, the warning is for some shrimp called Great Value Raw Frozen Shrimp. It may be contaminated with cesium-137, which is a radioactive isotope. So Trump's FDA caught this. So that's good. That's a good thing. They're still checking shrimp for radiation. Walmart says the products are sold at stores in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Texas, and West Virginia. And so don't eat shrimp with cesium-137 in it because it's detected in shipping containers at 4 U.S. ports. And so they got it. They caught it, and that's a good thing. And so you don't want to eat it. By the way, I was wondering what's wrong with eating cesium-137, but apparently if you have repeated low-dose exposure, it can mess with your DNA and give you cancer, elevated risk of cancer resulting from damage to DNA within living cells of the body. So don't eat cesium-137. And my new health kick, I'm going to try to avoid cesium-137. A House panel to make the Epstein files public after redactions to protect victim identities is the headline I just read. So we'll see. I think they're going to drip them out. I think it's not going to all come out at once. But we got to stay on this, of course. It's, I think, a really very important issue, obviously, and Trump doesn't like it. He's doing everything he can to distract from it. But they're going to come out in batches, and I think it's supposed to start on Friday. So we'll see what happens. Will they get buried? Will there be anything in them? Will they all be redacted? We'll find out soon. All right, those are the headlines that I've gathered for you today. Now it's time to get to the clip show. First, this is a Texas resident woman voter at a town hall talking about why redistricting is so racist. This has gone viral because she shows her work. She did her homework, and I thought it's real important, and I want to start with her. Brave citizen of Texas who's very smart and righteous.
My name is Lori Mitchell. I am very much against SB4. I am against SB4, the midterm redistricting bill. Texas is already gerrymandered in a very racist way. Currently, 37.7% of registered voters, Republicans, rule over the remaining 62% of registered voters in our state. This results form an incredibly racist voting map. And here's the breakdown specifically. It takes 430,000 white voters to get one representative with this map. It takes 1.2 million Latino voters to get a representative with this map. It takes 2 million black voters to get one representative with this map. To put it another way that's easy to understand, one Latina vote in the state of Texas is worth 1/3 of a white vote. One black vote in the state of Texas is worth 1/5 of a white vote. This is worse than the 3/5 compromise of 1787. And that the Republican leaders of the state of Texas feel beholden to an adjudicated rapist and 37-count convicted felon is loathsome. The Republican legislature is throwing Texas citizens into the wolf that they are too scared to fight themselves. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, good job, Lori. Great job. I love that and thought it was important and wanted to share that one with you. And more of that. Will it make a difference? Of course it makes a difference. Does it make a difference in the outcome of the actual policy? Maybe not. But it makes a difference in that you're out there and you're telling your neighbors, I don't buy this bullshit. I don't believe it. I live here on Earth One. I am like you. I do not want these racist gerrymandered districts that will punish myself, my neighbors, my community, and my country. And it does matter. So don't be so cynical. Who am I talking to? All right, let's go to the Goldman Sachs economist who is just being honest on CNBC. I thought this was worth sharing. This is where we're headed, and he's not BSing about it. That's good.
Or by U.S. consumers. Now, we've had tariffs in place on that very first round from China for about 5-6 months, so I think we have learned a little something. Our conclusion is that U.S. businesses have borne most of the tariff costs so far because it takes time to negotiate lower import prices or to pass price increases along to consumers. But if the most recent tariffs, like the April tariff, follow the same pattern that we've seen with those earliest February tariffs, then eventually, by the fall, we estimate that consumers would bear about 2/3 of the cost, foreign exporters would bear about 1/4 of the cost, and U.S. businesses would absorb less than 10%. That probably sounds small, less than 10%, but bear in mind that is a net number. If you are a company importing or using goods to sell in the U.S., you're going to get hit harder. If you are a company producing in the U.S. who is now protected from foreign competition, you can raise your prices and benefit. So those are our estimates, and I think actually they're quite consistent with what many other economists have found.
Well, that sounds fair enough, right? Because that means American-made products are going to do better, except for the fact that we don't make anything because we're not going to make anything, and nothing's going to change around us making stuff except for very much on the periphery and on the edges. I mean, come on. Tell me, what am I missing? I think that's what pretty much everybody believes and is saying, that we're not going to be making iPhones here in America. We're not building factories to build widgets here in America. That is going to continue to be done in other countries so we can buy them cheap. Very important report, I thought, and so I wanted to share it. Here is the governor of Pennsylvania. This is Josh Shapiro, self-explanatory.
I think the president's seeming attempts to try and rewrite our history goes against the very values that this nation stands for. I have grown increasingly concerned by the way in which President Trump and Vice President Vance speak about certain people in this country. Go look at what Vice President Vance said at Claremont University about a week or so ago. He believes in a tiered system in America, that certain people would count more than others based on what they look like or how long they've been here. We're a nation of immigrants here. We are a nation that has been warm and welcoming to all people who come here and pledge allegiance to this flag, pledge allegiance to this common purpose. I do not believe that trying to erase our shared history or try and put Americans into certain buckets or tier Americans based on who J.D. Vance or Donald Trump thinks count more or is more important than others. I don't believe that that's the American way. I think there is a battle for the soul of this nation going on right now. I think there is a battle for making sure that here in America, we still respect everyone, no matter what they look like, where they come from, who they love, or who they pray to. And I think it is important that as we engage in that battle, we don't whitewash our history the way the Trump administration seemingly wants to. The city of Philadelphia, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, has been central to the history of this nation, and we're going to protect that.
All right, that's the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who may very well run for president. Who knows? But Phil Rosenthal is a very funny guy. He's a co-creator, I think, and one of the head writers, producers on Everybody Loves Raymond. And then he did his own travel show, which aired on Netflix. I think may still be airing. Great guy. I love him, and everybody knows him, loves him as well. And he sat down with a reporter and had this to say about the value of diversity and immigration, seeing as that he's traveled all over the world.
Immigrants make every place they immigrate to better, not worse, in spite of what some people say. The best shawarma I ever had was not in the Middle East. It was in Glasgow, Scotland, from a Syrian immigrant. He just happened to make shawarma better than any I had when I was there.
And what you're saying is it goes deeper than just the actual food itself.
It's the success of immigration. And there's a line down the block of Scottish people for that shawarma. There's no one who lives in that neighborhood who would say, get rid of that guy.
You made a secretly subversive show, Phil.
It shouldn't be. It's just human.
Yeah, I love that. I love it so much. I love that guy, and that made me feel good to hear him say that. A good reminder. All right, wow. Now the very passionate, angry, fired up Mark Elias of Democracy Docket. Very few organizations and individuals doing as much to save our democracy as Mark and his organization. I think he sat down with the YouTuber Brian Tyler Cohen, who I think Glenn Kirshner has told me I can have him on anytime. They're good friends. So I'll have to have this guy on. But here is Mark on fire yesterday.
The goddamn Washington Post, and I'm sorry for swearing. I'm sorry for taking the Lord's name in vain, but their headline after Donald Trump's executive order is, and I quote, Trump previews executive order on voting. I'm sorry, what? You think what Brian and I are talking about here is Trump previewing an executive order on voting? It's as if, like, they were reporting on, Barack Obama or Joe Biden, announcing, Bald Eagle Month, right? I mean, yeah. This is not an executive order on voting, and he's not previewing it. He is saying he is going to lead a movement among the Republican states to do away with a method of voting that people rely on. He's going to issue an executive order that he does not have the power to do. He's going to expect states to act as his agent in the counting and tabulation of voting. And this is what the legacy media, what the Washington Post, what Jeff Bezos' house organ for Donald Trump reports as previewing executive order on voting. I mean, Brian, our democracy is not going to survive if we do not have more responsibility by the institutions of civil society, the nonprofit world, the legacy media, the law firms, than we are currently seeing. We're going to need a modicum of courage. That's why I started Democracy Docket in 2020. It's why you and I have been doing these videos now for years. And I wish I could say it is getting better. I wish I could say the legacy media is getting more responsible. But then you read something like that from the Washington Post and you're left just shaking your head and saying, no wonder why Donald Trump is deploying the National Guard and no one seems to care. No wonder why you are seeing people disappeared off the streets of major cities and nobody seems to care. It is because we have an absolute collapse and failure by the institutions that have promised us that democracy would not die in darkness, that in fact they stand for the proposition that democracy will die in plain sight of daylight.
Yeah. Well done, Mark Elias. I like it a lot. And now here is democracy dying in the light through the vessel of one of the most famous actors in America, Chris Pratt, Guardians of the Galaxy and Parks and Recreation and so many other television shows. He is beloved by American television and film viewers. He's a real dum-dum, though, I got to tell you. He's a real selfish, rich prick, and Sam Youngman savages him in my conversation coming up. But this is part of what we were referring to, part of his comments when he sat down with Bill Maher for Bill Maher's podcast. This is what Chris Pratt, the actor, had to say. It's worth mentioning. He is married to Maria Shriver and Arnold Schwarzenegger's daughter. And so Maria Shriver, of course, is a Kennedy. And so I guess he mingles with the Kennedys, particularly RFK. And here's Chris Pratt falling flat.
In politics, you inherit enemies, and when you jump on the bandwagon with who is the most divisive president ever, it makes sense that you're going to be made to look terrible. And so I don't know what to believe, because it's not like I sit with Bobby and I go, so hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about. It's like we're just playing cards or playing Mafia or having fun or having dinner. I'm not going to pick his brain to find out exactly which of those things are true. I just kind of assume that none of them are. And for the most part, I wish him well, man. I hope there's certain things that he oversees that seem to be supported in a bipartisan way, like getting terrible toxic stuff out of our kids' food. I think that's a great thing. And so if you do that, that's amazing. I'd hate to be so mired in hatred for the president that any success from his administration is something I'd have an allergic reaction to. To be like, oh, well, if they do it, I don't want it to happen. I'll put Clorox in my children's cereal myself. It's like, come on, be reasonable here. There's certain things that would be a good thing to have. I want them all to be successful. In politics,
No, we don't want them to be successful. More on that coming up with Sam Youngman. But you don't want bad people doing bad things to be successful. I don't want the EPA to reclassify pollutants as not pollutant. I don't want that success, okay? I don't want them to be successful in taking away women's reproductive rights and the right to vote. No, I want them to fail at those things, you dum-dum. Chris Pratt, America's sweetheart. All right, well, should be America's sweetheart is John Ossoff, Senator John Ossoff of Georgia. He's a real piece of meat candy. He's a beautiful man. More importantly, though, I shouldn't be objectifying him. He is smart, passionate, and very well-spoken. I always love to see and hear him. I think he's probably going to be a candidate for president in a normal America, and he'd be a good one. Here he is in an important interview yesterday, talking about putting National Guardsmen on the streets of America.
I've spoken with senior officers. This is not popular in the military. One, right? People don't join the United States Armed Forces to police American cities. And in my view, it violates some of the most fundamental and sacred principles embedded in our Constitution and the American social contract to deploy U.S. troops to patrol American cities. There's been no demonstration of any necessity for any of this. It is theater. It is a performance of power by an individual office holder, the President of the United States, who has made clear that he admires and envies the trappings and the powers of authoritarian leaders around the world. I've spoken.
Really good. Really good. Speaking of leaders around the world, this is the former Prime Minister of Australia on an Australian talk show. His name is Malcolm Turnbull, and he was present for previous negotiations between Trump and Putin in Trump 1 when he was Prime Minister. And this I thought was so revealing and so important and terrifying. But, it's done in an Australian accent, so it's a little bit more soothing.
Trump with Putin, as I have on a few occasions, he's like the 12-year-old boy that goes to high school and meets the captain of the football team. My hero. It is really creepy. It's really creepy. No,
and
I don't.
That struck you at the time.
Oh, absolutely! It struck everybody. It was like you could touch it. It was creepy. The creepiness was palpable.
Are you trying to say they're having a bromance?
No, I'm not saying. I'm just telling you what I saw. Regrettably, the Republican Party under Donald Trump, and particularly the right wing of the Republican Party, are very sympathetic to Vladimir Putin. I mean, I've been with Trump and Putin. Trump is in awe of Putin. Tyrants are often popular. You see, the key to democracy, liberal democracy, is that it empowers the majority, but it also, through the rule of law, constrains the majority. And if you get to the point where anybody who can muster a majority, and I don't think Trump can do that, by the way, but anyone who can muster a majority is given absolute power and then can do whatever they like to the minority, that's not a democracy. That is a tyranny. That is an autocracy, even if it's got the support of 51% of the population. That is not what makes a democracy. A democracy, as we understand it, is one where the rule of law protects all citizens and the rule of law applies to all citizens, whether they're the president or the prime minister or an ordinary, elector.
Yeah, wow. How about that? I don't know what to say other than here is our president. This is the Mad King talking to Mark Levin on, I don't know, I think it's his radio show. Mark Levin is a right-wing radio host who's terrible and has always been terrible and is a complete sellout, and anything that he used to scream into his dumb microphone with like 30-second pauses between words and then just yelling. He's just awful. But Trump said that he's a war hero in this clip, and I wanted it to get more attention. Will veterans care? Will MAGA care that Trump said he's himself a war hero? And he praises Benjamin Netanyahu. So this is a disgusting clip, and it's only like 20 seconds. So trigger alert. Here they are.
Worked with your friend Bibi. He's a good man. He's in there fighting. He's fighting. You know, they're trying to put him in jail on top of everything else. How about that?
Nuts.
He's a war hero. Because we work together. He's a war hero. I guess I am too.
Yep.
Nobody cares, but I am too. I mean, I sent those planes.
What? He is now fashioning himself a war hero. He's not joking around. He doesn't joke around. He floats things out there. Mark Levin, you heard him say, yep. I don't know if he's referring to that or saying Netanyahu's a war hero. Either way, doesn't matter. What matters is that he said he's a war hero for sending planes to bomb a mountain. And they failed. But they weren't fired upon. It wasn't that dangerous. Was it risky? I guess. I don't know. They'd already softened all. I'm still sure that the Prime Minister of Israel called up Trump and said, there will be no missiles being shot at American planes if you send them because we killed all of their missile defenses. This could not be a safer mission for American planes. We need your planes. We need your bombs. Go. Please go. I will, I'll give you whatever you need. I'm sure that he made him some promises. It wasn't that risky of a decision, I believe, in the end. And what was, though, was when former President Obama sent a SEAL team to kill or capture bin Laden. That was real risky, as you know. So I guess he's a war hero, too. Barack Obama, war hero. They're all war heroes, apparently. Crazy. All right, here's Hillary Clinton. She was sitting down with Jessica Tarlov on her podcast, and she thinks the Supreme Court's going to overturn Obergefell. And so if you're gay, get married now, she says, because they won't overturn existing marriages, is her analysis.
In order to get us to this point, it took 50 years to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court will hear a case about gay marriage. My prediction is they will do to gay marriage what they did to abortion. They will send it back to the states. Anybody in a committed relationship out there in the LGBTQ community, you ought to consider getting married, because I don't think they'll undo existing marriages, but I fear that they will undo the national right. And so a little fewer than half the states will recognize gay marriage. There are going to be real world consequences, but a lot of them are not likely to hit with the velocity and intensity until after the 2026 election. So they're trying to set it up so that they can win that election and then dump all of this other bad news on the American people. And they're doing state capture of capitalism, state capture of institutions. The courts are doing their best, but, it's slow. And the Supreme Court gave Trump a big victory when they said no nationwide injunctions to stop allegedly illegal activity. You have to go district by district, circuit by circuit. So I think that in an election, we have a better than fighting chance, but we're going to be fighting with maybe one or even two hands tied behind us if Texas does what it wants to do, if other states do what Trump tells them to do, because they don't want a fair fight. They don't want to have a fight about the issues. They want to distract and divert attention away from all of their problems and, more importantly, not just their political problems, but the problems they're causing to American businesses, American consumers, to our institutions, all of which will have a lot of bad effects on most people in this country, one way or the other.
All right. Well, I hope she's wrong, but I fear she may be right. We're talking with Eric Siegel very soon about that and much, much more. Now I've got a long clip. This is, I think, almost 8 minutes from Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is a PhD professor, and she is the creator of the 1619 Project. And she decided to go on, I know she thought about this, whether or not she wanted to combat the nonsense and ignorance that we heard from the fitness expert, Jillian, who's fashioned herself as a political pundit. Jillian Michaels is her name, talking about slavery and making the argument that apparently only 2% of people at the time, white people at the time, owned slaves. So they weren't all bad. I mean, we have heard these zombie arguments since the Civil War and before the Civil War, and it's always worth knocking them down and learning or relearning, which is why these museums and education and history are so important. So here on Stand Up, you're always going to get an accurate depiction of history written by the victims, not the victors. The old Howard Zinn, who radicalized me version of American history, to say the least. Well, Nicole Hannah-Jones and her 1619 Project have done as much, if not more than any other American, to educate or re-educate us the truth of America's origins. And so I thought this was worth sharing. This is about 8 minutes, and it's a good education, and I'm very glad that she decided to do this. Here it is.
Hey, y'all. I do not usually do these videos, but as a creator of the 1619 Project and someone who has studied the history of slavery for 3 decades, I could not let that viral CNN clip of Jillian Michaels stand. I have to first state that the times are far too serious and dangerous for us to lend our platforms to harmful nonsense. It's simply irresponsible, with everything that's happening in this country, to have someone as credentialist as Jillian Michaels on a major network show legitimizing the erasure of our history. Now, I know there have been some viral efforts to debunk her claim that somehow slavery was a side institution in the United States because less than 2% of white people owned slaves. But even those efforts, while valiant, by embracing this right-wing framing, they still aren't really getting to it. You see, this is how numbers and data, though technically true, can also be lies. And this is why we can't let bad faith actors set the parameters of the debate or of our collective understanding. So please bear with me because this is a lot. Let's take the fewer than 2% of white people owned slaves at face value, though we know that number is technically incorrect. And let's apply that standard to any other industry. What percentage of Americans own social media companies or technology companies such as Apple? It's a tiny percentage. I'm doubtful if it's even 1% of Americans. And yet no one would credibly argue that social media companies are not ubiquitous across American life, that they don't play a major influence on our political, social, and economic life in America. And in fact, what we know is that more than 70% of Americans use social media, though hardly any Americans own social media platform. There's a reason that the heads of Meta, Apple, and Amazon, Google, and X all took part in Trump's inauguration festivities, with several of them standing on the actual dais during Trump's inauguration. These men also happened to be amongst the wealthiest in the world and demonstrate how a small cadre of super wealthy men can have an outsized impact on American politics and culture. This is just critical thinking, y'all. So if we want to play the numbers game, the much more important measure is what percentage of Americans owned slaves? No, but what percentage of those empowered did? So here we go. Before 1865, the end of slavery in the United States, 63% of U.S. presidents had been slave owners at some point in their lives. More than 1,800 members of Congress owned slaves, meaning between 1789 and 1819, more than half of the men elected to Congress each session were slave owners. What about the Supreme Court? 26 of this nation's first 30 Supreme Court justices were enslavers, and about half of all the Supreme Court justices before the Civil War were enslavers. So many Supreme Court justices were enslavers that if we added up all the Supreme Court justices coming all the way to this present court, 1 out of 4 of all Supreme Court justices in this nation's history were enslavers. I mean, let's just look at our money. All but one of the people on our cash currency engaged in African slavery. Look at the $1 bill, $2 bill, 10, 20, 50, 100. All these men engaged in slavery. It's weird that we didn't value all those non-slave holding white people enough to put them on our money. The majority of the most powerful men in this country, the men who made the federal laws, interpreted the laws, and enforced the laws, built their wealth on African slavery. And I assure you, that number says much more about the country we inhabit than that 2%. But let's not stop there, because even limiting the boundaries of the conversation to those who owned other human beings is highly misleading. Much like technology today, slavery in the United States was a national endeavor that undergirded not just our political system, but our entire economy. During the height of slavery, it was not the Northeast, Boston or New York, but the Mississippi River Valley in the Deep South that had more millionaires per capita than anywhere in the nation. And the Confederacy, had it succeeded at being a separate country, would have been the 4th richest nation in the world when the Civil War started. Enslaved people in the U.S. produced 7/8 of the world's cotton supply, and slave-grown cotton constituted 50% of all U.S. exports, making it the #1 export in America. And the North was completely intertwined in slavery, so much so that at the start of the Civil War, New York City actually considered seceding from the Union because the economy of the nation's trade capital was so heavily reliant on slavery. White enslavers financed their operations through New York banks, protected their enslaved property through New York insurance companies, and transported their slave-grown cotton on New York ships, flooding $200 million into New York's economy every year. Enslaved people built the famous wall that Wall Street is named after. Famous companies such as Lehman Brothers are rooted in slavery. The Lehman Brothers began as cotton brokers in Alabama before moving to New York to help establish the New York Stock Exchange. Brooks Brothers made not only fine suits, but slave cloth outfits to clothe the enslaved. Domino Sugar dominated based on slave-grown sugar. As a result, by some estimates, New York received 40% of all U.S. cotton revenue. They didn't have to own the slaves to profit greatly from slavery. Northern states may have outlawed slavery, but they continued to profit off of slavery and the slave trade. We learn about the marvels of the Industrial Revolution, but that revolution was made possible not just by technology, but by cheap slave-grown cotton. Rhode Island outlawed slavery in 1787, but built its economy on the slave trade. 60% of all ships in the U.S., slave ships, left Rhode Island, and they spawned an entire enterprise to support these slave traders, shipbuilders, sailors, carpenters, rope makers. James DeWitt, he was a Rhode Island slave trader, and when he died in 1837, he was the 2nd richest person in America. I could go on and on, but this video is already long enough. I mean, I could talk about how our Ivy League universities either owned, hired, or invested in enslaved people. How places like Yale, for instance, are named after a slave trafficker, and Georgetown sold slaves it owned down south to avoid having to close its doors. I could talk about while, quote unquote, only 2% of white people owned slaves. By the time of the Civil War, the United States, the land of the free, had the largest enslaved population in the world. That the value of those enslaved people, that human property, was greater than all of this nation's factories, railroads, and banks combined. In other words, the United States economy and political systems were built in significant part by slavery. This is simply undeniable. Without slavery, our nation would be unrecognizable to us. We cannot let them choose the parameters of the conversation in order to obfuscate the truth. That is disinformation. And the times are too serious for us to proliferate a simplistic, unsophisticated, and childish understanding of the history of slavery in the United States, because they are using this mythology to justify erasing our history because they want to erase our rights.
Yeah, there you go. There it is. She lays it all out for you. We should discuss it. We should share that clip and educate, re-educate your friends, neighbors, loved ones. So important, the work that she and many others are doing there. And so I'm glad to share that on today's episode of the show. And finally, a little comedy from the great Mark Maron, his new comedy special. Let's do it.
Look, I have to be honest with you. Trump is probably the most horrible human that ever lived in any capacity doing anything. And not a political statement. That is observational. Completely observational. No matter what he would do, if he was doing another job, he would be the same asshole. Like if he was working on a car lot and you went onto that lot to buy a new car and he came walking towards you, innately you'd be like, nah, not that guy. I don't feel comfortable with that guy. There's something off, not right. It's not right.
Yeah, Mark Maron doing it the way only he can, and that special is really good. All the late night shows have been off forever, but I think they're coming back the first week of September, so we'll get back to those clips, I'm sure, soon. Can't wait for Colbert to come back. By the way, watch my appearance on the podcast Sanity Cast with former CNNers Dave Briggs and my friend Allison Camerata. Talked with them all about Colbert and comedy. I'll include the audio from it maybe on tomorrow's show, but if you want to go look it up and get some traffic, I posted it on my socials, and you can go watch that. I thought it was a really good conversation, and so I'm pretty happy with it. All right, well, let's get to the conversation I'm most happy with. It is Sam Youngman, who is so good in today's conversation. You can watch it on YouTube, by the way, if you want. Go follow and support Sam at The Alt Media. It's he and Adam Parkamenko's media outlet, and they do Today's Big Stuff, a daily newsletter every day there. You can follow Sam on Twitter and Blue Sky, but the main project, the main place is thealtmedia.com. So support and subscribe there for all of the great work that Sam and Adam are doing there. I'm always super psyched to talk to Sam, but today was, I don't know, the best? Maybe the best. I love this guy so much. Let's jump right into the conversation. Sam Young, you mentioned D.C. It's one of the things I want to ask you about. I don't know, how long did you live there, and were you ever murdered or raped?
I was there for about 10 years. No murders, no rapes. You know, I think I was the criminal back then in D.C. No, man, D.C. is a pussycat of a town. It's, if you get away from the fucking politicians, it's the greatest, it's a great city. You know, I always felt bad when I would trash Washington. I mean, I wrote a magazine piece called Take This Town and Shove It. But the reality is Washington, D.C. is a great city. It's the politicians that fucking ruin it. Right now, the criminal in Washington I'm most concerned about is the convicted felon that a judge called a rapist. Just before you and I went live today, he was on Truth Social talking about how that gosh dang Smithsonian is only showing the bad sides of slavery. I know. It sure is hard to figure out what connects all these dots, right? I mean, I think about New York Times reporters who just couldn't be sure if the president was racist in his heart. And for me, the birther guy who wouldn't rent to black people, that was not a hard call to make.
I'm looking at it right now. The museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke The Smithsonian is out of control, all caps, where everything discussed is how horrible a country is, how bad slavery was, and how how everything is about how bad slavery was. I think that's what you're reacting to.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. We don't ever talk enough about the benefits of slavery. It's, I got to tell you, George Wallace must be spinning in his fucking grave to know that all he had to do was call it woke and DEI, and he could have gotten away with all the racist shit that was in his cold, dead heart.
That's so right. I mean, I don't know. Somehow Trump gave permission years ago, about 10 years ago, and people have only now taken permission. It's so bold about their racism. Even the government now, promoting it with that recruiting slogan for ICE, preserve your culture. I think it would protect your culture. What?
Yeah.
What culture?
Yeah, they're really not hiding it at all.
Right.
I mean, it's obvious. It's blatant. It's been obvious for a long time. That's the really maddening thing about Trump is that there's no fucking mystery behind any of this. Yeah. Why is he kissing Putin's ass? Because he's Putin's bitch. Because Putin's probably got something on him. Why is he passing the big beautiful bill? Because he wants to look out for rich assholes like him, and he doesn't give a shit about anybody else. Yeah, why is he, defending slavery and making the Smithsonian less woke? Because he's a racist piece of shit. He always has been. There is no mystery to any of this. What you have is a Beltway press corps who runs this crazy shit to the normalizer machine, and it comes out sounding like something a normal, decent human being would do or say. And for a decade, we've just been pretending like the crazy shit that he says and does all day long isn't really that crazy.
I adore you. If you were here, I'd make sweet love to you. I love the way you talk. Going back to DC, what do you make of, what is this moment in time where the National Guard is in DC and National Guard from 4 Republican states now are also there, which is just so crazy because they're not doing anything. They're away from their families. They're using the National Guard. And then these Republican governors are kissing the ring by sending their guardsmen to do nothing, to be away from their jobs and their families, all for a show, for a charade. And a lot of people are saying that it's a pilot, that he can do it in D.C. because he's the president. But what do you make of this moment, of this action, and how much attention we should pay to it?
I mean, quite a bit. I think as much as we paid attention to the shots fired at Fort Sumner, right? I mean, and you're talking to somebody who lives in Los Angeles.
Right.
So, yeah, D.C. is not a pilot. It's part 2. We saw this play out here. It's just East Coast media doesn't really give a shit about what happens to L.A. unless we're on fire. And even then, kind of. No, look, man, this is terrifying. This is what, the don't tread on me people always claimed to care about, was that the President of the United States would start using the military like his own fucking personal police force and going after cities and Americans he doesn't like. I am utterly horrified by the pictures and the video I'm seeing out of D.C. The only thing that makes me really happy is watching the people of D.C. fight back, watching them taunt and mock and make fun of these fucking weekend warriors with their neck gaiters and their mask, posing for pictures in slow motion videos outside the Lincoln Memorial. It's it's a weird paradox in America right now where Trump, and I talk about this a lot, but Trump creates heroes. And, one of the nice side effects, one of the silver linings of fascism is it presents opportunities for everyday Americans to be heroes. And so when I see people saying, fuck you to ICE, saying it to their faces, I'm like, there's an American hero. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not going to endorse the sandwich guy just because I'm not quite ready to endorse, violence against police officers. That's more of a Republican thing, with January 6th. But I tell you, when I see that, the takeoff on the Banksy with the I saw it, yeah, I mean, that's the spirit I think we're all looking for.
The picture of a guy like a Banksy, like of the guy who threw the sandwich. And it's gone pretty viral. People are, well, I mean, you say he makes heroes, and fascism and authoritarianism does tend to do that because we're not used to thinking in America that speaking out was necessarily heroic. We have so much free speech. We can speak out and say almost whatever we want, especially if you're white, to law enforcement, to people in government, in authoritarian authority positions. But now it's scary to speak out. Yeah. It's scary to show up and stand in the way of these guys. So I take your point about making heroes, but it's sad that that's what heroic is in America in the 21st.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the ideal would be that we're all allowed to just live our normal lives in a free country without being fucked with by the president and his goons at every turn. But, we don't get to choose the times we live in. We just get to choose how we respond to them. And right now what we're seeing is Americans, everyday Americans, taking a stand for what's right and making clear to these masked thugs that they're not welcome in these cities. And I'll tell you, as ugly as, as ashamed as I am to be an American a lot of these days, that's the stuff that makes me proud to be an American, because I think that embodies the American spirit.
You mentioned the masks a couple times, and I was watching one of these videos, these horrible videos. Why, I don't know if I want to watch them or if I don't want to watch them, but I watched them, and I think it's important that someone like me does so I can talk about them and feel the emotions that you have around them. But I was watching one of these ICE guys or whoever he was with a mask on, white dude, skinny white dude, and the way he was talking to people that were standing on the sidewalk, get the fuck back. They were, posing no threat or whatever, but the way that he was talking and the way that he was acting, it's not as if he wouldn't act that way if he didn't have the mask on, but what do you think the mask does to create a lot more protection for really outrageous and abusive behavior, probably for anyone? Burglars wear masks too, and, the argument is that they're going to be doxxed. Yeah, because they're doing fucking horrible shit. And say just more about the masks themselves and what it creates.
Well, I think the masks have the same effect that Trump does. He gives license to these truly horrible people to be their most horrible selves. You've got some tiny peckered little punk wearing a net gate over his face, screaming at women and children to show just how fucking tough he is. You take that mask off, see what a badass he is then, right? Take his racist hero out of the White House and then see what a badass he is, right? Everybody's a lot. It's like Twitter, right? It's like it's like real life Twitter, where you can put you become an anonymous avatar, and all of a sudden you're real tough. You got a real big mouth because you don't have to deal with any consequences.
That's why my favorite place to be is the local Facebook page where I live, because I never really insult these people. I almost always try to kill them with kindness because they say horrible things to me, and they've done horrible things to me. And almost always I'm like, do you want to grab coffee? And I name like a local place because say it to my face. Like, right. I'm not going to try to fight somebody. I would much rather you punch me because there's cameras everywhere, and then I'll own a lot of your shit. By all means, hit me. But I do want to see if you would say that kind of nonsense, stupid argument to my face. And, I just love arguing especially with idiots. And so,
and most of them wouldn't. And you know how I know that? Because Trump wouldn't. Look at the White House yesterday. Look at how much shit this guy talks when he's on Truth Social about the leaders of Europe, about Zelensky. But when they get face to face, he's just a big softy, isn't he? He wants to make friends. He couldn't even attack Zelensky in the Oval Office last time by himself. He had to have Vice President Couchfuck there to do it for him.
I feel like, I love experts and foreign policy experts and Russia experts and history experts, and I think they're all important and relevant right now. But I also think anyone can analyze what is going on here if you just know a little bit about Vladimir Putin. This dude is just dragging it out. He's just buying time. He will make zero concessions. He will sign zero peace treaties, no matter, even if an American administration turned the screws on them and put in more sanctions and did all kinds of other things that you could do. This dude's not giving up because his lifelong mission is to own Ukraine and make sure it's not kind of Western friendly. So all this analysis that we're seeing from experts, Sam, I'm just not sure it's worth it because of who this guy is. We all know he is. What do you think about all the analysis, and what do you think his motivation is right now, Putin?
I mean, his motivation is to, like you said, is to basically reunite the Soviet Union. He considers that, a disgrace to his homeland, and he wants to right that wrong. It's funny. You say nothing would stop him. I'd like to test that theory by seeing what happens when he runs out of troops. I would like to arm Ukraine indefinitely and let them continue taking down what used to be a superpower without firing a single American shot, without a single pair of American boots on the ground. I want to see what happens when Putin runs out of poor Russian men and boys to put in his fucking wood chipper. Let's exhaust him. Let's do what the Ukrainians have been doing for 3 years, which is to drag his sorry ass out on a battlefield and show he's not nearly as tough as he claims to be. That would have been the position of strength I would have preferred to see. Get him down to his last 2 or 3 soldiers and then see if he wants to negotiate.
I mean, I think that I've never been for any war. I've certainly never been for any proxy war in our lifetime. America's fought a lot of proxy wars kind of alone. They've dragged the coalition of partners and your Cameroons and Barzinias as made up a country along because they have leverage over them somehow or not. But whether it had been Vietnam or Iraq or the proxy war in Afghanistan against Russia, we can argue about whether they worked or not. But in this case, it's all of Europe and us against Russia, and we don't have to put any troops on the ground, and it's a dime in our defense budget. We were spending that money anyway, and the money comes back to America. It's American jobs. It seems like a pretty good idea, a pretty good expenditure of money to bleed the Russian military dry, destroy their navy. They're still going to have their nukes. They're still going to be a threat, but at least they can't continue to be aggressive in Ukraine and their neighbors. It seems like a really good strategy, and I've never argued for any kind of war in my life.
Yeah, I know it's crazy. The sleepy guy could figure this out, but the Russia guy couldn't. No, I mean, look, the reality is, I'm not a warmonger either. Part of the reason I'm not is because I've seen wars of choice fought over my lifetime, wars like Iraq. This, to me, was a war of necessity. They were invaded. They were invaded by a man who has made clear he has no intention of stopping. So then it becomes an existential question. Are we fine with Russia taking Europe? Are we not concerned about what that means for us eventually? I know Trump likes to say, well, there's a big ocean between us. Just the dumbest motherfucker. The reason we care about Ukraine, other than the fact that we're supposed to be a country that stands up for freedom and stands up to oppose bullies, is because it is an existential threat to our allies, just like Hitler was in World War II, right? I mean, we stand up to this shit. We fight them there so we don't have to fight them here. But this instance, we weren't even doing the fighting. Other brave soldiers were doing the fighting. They were bringing Russia to our knees. All we had to do was keep supplying ammunition.
What do you make of the Marco Rubios and the Republicans who have forever been anti-Putin, anti-Russia, supporting, inviting him to America and rolling out a red carpet and not, getting rolled by almost all accounts, but at least they flew some fighter jets over. What do you make of this Republican Party being so friendly to Vladimir Putin? I'm thinking of Rubio especially.
Yeah, all these tough guys sure do get on their knees fast, don't they? I've heard listen to Marco Rubio, his whole fucking career, talk about Fidel Castro, and I am quite certain at this point that Marco would have been the first to volunteer to suck a fart out of Castro's asshole if he'd been given the chance. Rubio has made clear his only issue with dictators is that he can't get close enough to them. I've never seen a man look like he's rotting from the inside out the way that guy does. He looks like a Halloween pumpkin a month after Halloween. Like his soul is fucking dying, and you can see it. It's visible.
That is the clip, bro. Oh, man, that is perfect. I always call him a hollow barrel, but I got to make that shorter. A pumpkin a month after Halloween. How much of this do you think is a distraction from the Epstein files? And what do you say to people who say, keep talking about the Epstein files?
I agree. Keep talking about the Epstein files. Right now, one of the most notorious child rapists and traffickers is sitting in a country club prison in Texas instead of doing the hard time in Florida she was sentenced to, and we don't know why. We don't know why this administration that is invading American cities because they're supposedly tough on crime, we don't know why they're coddling a child rapist and trafficker. Yes, goddamn right, keep asking those questions because we deserve to know an answer. Oh, and by the way, we're paying to take care of her, so we deserve to know those answers. But here's the thing. I won't say we can walk and chew gum at the same time. What I'm saying is none of this shit is a distraction. It's all important. There's none of this that we can be dismissive of and just say, oh, well, this is just a distraction from this thing. It all matters. It's all bad. And it's all part and parcel of a corrupt and criminal president doing corrupt and criminal shit. It all leads back to that. So, yeah, no, I'm not ready to give up the Epstein story either. But I'm also not going to look the other way while he's invading American cities and terrorizing American citizens. I'm not going to look the other way when he's selling out our allies so he can kiss Putin's dictator ass. I have the bandwidth to be outraged and furious about all of it.
Ah, well said. What do you make of this redistricting gerrymandering scandal that has been, again, Trump asking to find a few more seats in Texas and other Republican states doing his bidding? And the answer from blue state governors like Newsom and Hochul and others, we can do it too. But I feel like I read some analysis that the math is not on the side of democracy and Democrats. And so, I mean, do you have a full grasp on this scandalous, insidious, anti-democratic effort that is being undertaken by Republicans on behalf of Schittler?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say go as far as say I have a full grasp, other than to say what we're talking about is an arms race. If you do it, we'll do it. The California setup is basically set up as a trigger law, which we won't vote on this thing unless Texas goes ahead with their attempt to rig the map. My big takeaway from this is that Trump's internal polling must be a goddamn nightmare. I mean, the way he is going out of his way to publicly rig next year's election makes very clear to me he knows he's going to lose. The quote, big, beautiful bill is an absolute disaster. I don't think I've ever seen legislation poll worse than that does. His approval ratings, anywhere from Pew has him at 38. Reuters Ipsos yesterday had him at 40. He's a disaster. He's terrible. Americans are remembering why they voted this guy out in the first place. I just wish our memories weren't so shitty. We, wouldn't have voted him back in the first place. But to me, that's the big takeaway from the redistricting. That and Texas is just off the fucking rails. I mean, they're literally holding a black woman hostage in the House chamber as we speak because she refuses to sign a permission slip that says she has to be followed around by a state trooper. To me, the more they go down this road of authoritarianism, the more clear it becomes who they really are. There's a part of me that just almost is begging Trump to actually arrest Obama. I feel like that would make it clearer for middle-of-the-road Americans who aren't paying attention than just about anything else would. Barack Obama is an enormously popular figure in this country. If you get outside the Fox News echo chambers, I would really like for Trump to put his money where his big mouth is. Go ahead. Arrest Obama. I fucking dare you.
Look, Sam, I appreciate it, but maybe back off a little bit. Slow your roll.
Yeah. It's not like he and I are tight. So, I mean, it's always easy for me to make gambles like this with somebody else's freedom, right?
What about the reaction from your governor there, Gavin Newsom? One of the things he's doing, I mean, he's just his new talking point, I think, is wake up, which I really like, but also his social media game. The California governor press office is mocking Trump's years-long Twitter style. And what do you make of it, this mockery? Is it effective?
It is absolutely effective. If the goal is to get in the heads of Trump's army of kiss asses, then this is going gangbusters.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's got people like me who have always been have always looked at Gavin with a bit of a side eye, not knowing whether to trust the guy, who sits down with Steve Bannon, not knowing whether to trust the guy who can be anti-trans or, a guy who, cleans out homeless encampments with his own bare hands and a camera watching. What I have seen from Gavin Newsom in the last couple of weeks has been, I would call it inspired. I mean, it's just, giving them a taste of their own medicine. And I don't know if you saw Dana Perino on Fox News yesterday. She straight up fucking lost it. Yeah. I mean, she lost it. And if you look at Trump's deputy press secretaries, you can tell how much this is eating them alive. Just to have somebody throw back in his face the inane ramblings. I also love when he refers to himself as your favorite governor. I mean, all that shit. I live to mock these assholes. It's my favorite thing to do. Yeah. It's what's keeping me going. Yep. And I've got to hand it to Gavin and his social media team because they are doing some Hall of Fame shit right now.
It's actually an important job. It really is an important public policy job to fulfill the role of mocker in chief mockery because it works. It's effective. And, I really believe that people like Gavin Newsom should have somebody on their social media staff that's a legit comedy writer whose strength is comebacks and witticisms. And, there's a lot of Congress people who are pretty good at this on their own. And I'm sure they have people helping them like AOC or Jasmine Crockett or plenty of others on social media. But I think you should have someone on your staff who's really good at these types of comebacks because it's effective, it works, and like you're saying, I really think it matters. So, my thought.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been cheering them on. My favorite, one of the only things I like about Trump and his team is they don't ever hide it when something is getting under their skin, and this is clearly getting under their skin. Yeah. You mentioned that Gavin's thing these days is Democrats need to wake up. I think what he said is you need to wake the fuck up, and he's absolutely right. The other thing, I think this is a good test case for a lot of people on the left. It's a good reminder that when we do have a 2028 nominee, he or she may not be your first choice. They may not be somebody that you completely respect or love or anything else. They may just be the person who can win. And sometimes that's okay. If you're looking for purity in politics, then you're probably the kind of person that looks for love in a strip club. It just ain't happening. Sorry. Oh, no.
I've done it, actually. I found love in a strip club, I thought.
Expensive, I'm sure.
It was, I thought. I really thought she liked me. And then we left, and she didn't.
I'm sorry about it.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Fake
ago.
Number?
It was a long time ago. No number. Just said she'd like to see me again. And my friend told me on the way out it was because I was giving her money. That's what he told me.
You needed your friend to tell you that?
I mean,
you're a sweet man.
She seemed really sincere to me, and she was kind of like at my league.
I'm torn between wanting to give you a hug and wanting to sell you a $60 Trump Bible.
The latter, probably. I'll take both. What do you think of just? I'll let you go. But Democratic leadership right now. I mean, it feels like this guy Zohran Mamdani, who is running for mayor of New York, but gosh, he's so charismatic. He's so thoughtful. He's so empathic. He's a real smart guy. He seems to be one of the leaders of the movement, the kind of one of the ones we've been waiting for to run. I think there's a lot of great candidates around the country, and in a quote normal political atmosphere where voting wasn't being suppressed and there weren't all these hijinks, I would be a lot more excited by these candidates who seem really good in states like Iowa and Senate races and the governor race and there. But what do you think of the current electeds and as well as those people who have announced that they're running?
Yeah. I mean, you say, what do I think of Democratic leadership? I guess my response is to ask, who is Democratic leadership? If we're talking about Zohran Mamdani and we're talking about Gavin Newsom, then I would say I'm thrilled by what I'm seeing from Democratic leadership. They're taking the fight to Trump. They're, fighting for the things people care about. If you're talking about our leaders in Washington, I don't have much to say, but they don't really either. One thing I was going to say a minute ago about Newsom and his approach to all of this is I think one of the reasons people are so happy and even relieved to see it is it suggests that finally somebody in a position like his gets what we're dealing with. Joe Biden, God love him, as my mother used to say. I really like Biden, but Biden was a nice guy who thought that Mitch McConnell was his friend. We're not doing that shit anymore. We're not pretending like, oh, my friends across the aisle. Fuck that. Yeah. Senate Democrats keep playing that game, and people hate them for it. Look at how the Democratic Party is polling right now, and you'll see that even our own people don't like us. Like, we don't like ourselves. And until we stop just showing up to get kicked in the teeth, I'm afraid it's going to be that way. That's why you have people like me who are skeptical of Gavin Newsom, but standing up and cheering him on because we're just so fucking sick and tired of the Washington doublespeak and people who don't seem to get the gravity of the situation.
Least important thing, but I wanted to get your reaction to it. The actor Chris Pratt sat down with Bill Maher.
The worst Chris.
He's the worst of the Chris's. And I was just outraged by what he said. A couple of people were like, why are you giving him any attention? I'm like, because when you have a platform, blank, period. Like, I just don't admire people who have a platform and don't use it for something. And not only that, just what he said. I mean, it's like, people shouldn't get so upset, so mired in hatred. And also said, I'm not going to root against our leaders. I want them to succeed. It's just also, I've always thought that was putrid. You don't want the president to succeed? No! Yeah. I don't want him to succeed. Like, why is that so hard? I didn't want Bush to succeed either. Like, I don't want bad people to succeed and making shit worse for people who are most marginalized, for example, or, I don't know, the fucking planet. What do you think of Chris Pratt and anybody else who says that kind of nonsense?
I don't think much of Chris Pratt. And I'll tell you why. Because it's real fucking easy for Chris Pratt and Bill Maher to sit there in their studio, rich as fuck, saying these things. Yeah. Offering this pablum. And I'll tell you why. Because ICE isn't coming after Chris Pratt's family. Nobody is starving Chris Pratt's children. Nobody is taking Chris Pratt's health care. Chris Pratt's going to be just fucking fine. He has the luxury of, he even said, when I'm playing cards with RFK Jr., it's like, oh, I didn't realize you were one of the common men. Well, thanks for weighing in. I don't have any time for these rich elitist assholes who have no idea what Trump administration policies mean for real people. And it's just, I don't know. I'm always surprised Bill Maher wants to have somebody else on that would interrupt him smelling his own farts. I mean, especially this guy. I feel like it's just, it's the Spider-Man meme, right? Where there's just two guys that are, agreeing with each other nonstop. I saw Maher was saying, last week that, Democrats are afraid to go on his show. It's like saying you're afraid to get syphilis. No, man, I just don't want syphilis.
God, you're on fire today. That's amazing. You always are. I really appreciate you weighing in on all these important issues. I love reading your newsletter, and I love even more talking to you. It's like I'm reading your newsletter. Thank you very much. I hope everybody watching will go subscribe right now to thealtmedia.com. If you're not already subscribed, you're really missing out on more of what Sam is bringing over there. Sam, thank you.
Pete, you're the best, buddy. Thanks for always being so supportive. You're very kind.
Yeah, there he goes. Sam Youngman, The Alt Media. Go subscribe right now. Go tell him you heard him on the show. Over on Blue Sky. If you're on Blue Sky, let Sam know. I think that's where he's most active on a regular basis. That you heard him here. Because we love him very much. And I love the newsletter that they do every day as well. Today's big stuff, part of thealtmedia.com. That's all I've got for you on today's show. I am so grateful that you listened. If you listened all the way to the end, that means you're a bumblebee. That's what I call you. And I love you. And I appreciate you. And I'm so grateful to you and for you. And especially John Carroll, who writes and performs all our music. Thanks for new jingles. And we love you, John. JohnCarroll.org. Go buy his new album. And good luck with your health journey. Your suffering, whatever you're dealing with. I hope you can make it through it and make it back to us. And join us at our hangouts and Farm Jam or wherever we'll be together, supporting each other in any way that we can. That's it. That's all. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. We got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of the day. burning in sin. They knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and hear